He unsealed his helmet, setting it against the lock at his hip. Technicians and mechanics were wearing their standard combat armor, yet they moved to perform their duties as the last of the fighters landed and the hangar sealed itself once more. As we strode with a firm step, he was only vaguely aware of the eyes that turned to him in his passing. From the corner of his eye, he caught Sabraska Kaspars giving instructions to refit and refuel every available fighter, briefly giving him a respectful nod and an otherwise charming smile before returning to her duties. Lupin Lusanto gave him a wary yet firm glare that transmitted a minuscule amount of respect, but no animosity, as he guided the chaos of his personnel with an expert hand. Wyatt returned the gestures out of habit, while his attention was focused on the ruined prototype fighter that belonged to Raquel Otillo. He inspected the damage carefully without halting. The left wing was almost gone in its entirety, with exposed circuitry sparking every few seconds, and several scratch marks and other minor details that spoke to just how close she'd been to dying. That thought stirred his anger once more as he approached the bronze-skinned woman. Nultar, Leopold, and Gregor were with her, lined up and facing toward him, with her at the forefront. He studied her expression, the beads of sweat running down her face, the nervousness reflected in her eyes, her stiff posture, and her hands clenched tightly into fists. Memories of his days at the academy flashed before his eyes. He'd been in her position several times, the target of a pissed-off instructor or professor singling him out just to humiliate him publicly for some offense or another. Mainly, whenever he managed to prove himself a better pilot than his noble schoolfellows, he remembered every time he'd been ordered around or put down in front of others because of his commoner status. He remembered his first meeting with Salazar Reed and the scene he caused. He didn't care about others humiliating him, but he'd seen it happen to others too. And when it happened to other nobles, it was always a surreal experience, as if they fed on that. Of course they do. They're expecting me to do the same, to put her down in front of everybody for the mistake she made. I'm her superior officer, the leader of my named squadron. Her mistakes are my responsibility, Wyatt thought, frowning. Instantly, he saw her stiffen more, believing his frown was directed at her. Galt and Redford's words came to him then, providing him with guidance that he could finally somewhat understand. He could choose what sort of officer and leader he could be. Finally, Milcade's encouragement rang within him as he remembered that playful, charming smile and his intense orange eyes. Be Wyatt Staples. Time around him seemed to crawl to a standstill, and the air was hard to breathe. The pressure was thick and heavy. Everyone knew it and felt it as the black-haired man came to a halt in front of the woman. His eyes were fixed on hers, and for just a fleeting moment the urge to belittle her gripped his heart. Yet as he inhaled deeply, he squashed that morbid feeling, discarding it as useless. You almost died, Otillo. He began in a calm tone that still reflected his anger, but it was focused, intense, and clear, not wild like when he exploded in the aftermath against the Drazen at Hastrung. You were reckless, and you let yourself be blindsided by what? Bloodthirst? The desire to score more kills? Tell me, Otillo, what made you risk your life so needlessly and nearly get yourself killed for nothing in return? Raquel blinked, confused at first. Behind her, the original trio shared equally puzzled glances with each other, not quite expecting Wyatt's approach to the situation. She opened her mouth, then closed it, only to turn her head to her squad mates. When no answer came from them, she turned to face Wyatt again. Sir, I don't understand, she asked, befuddled. Do you need me to repeat myself, Otillo? Wyatt asked more firmly, but keeping his calm, even tone. Raquel saluted out of pure reflex, her senses returning to her as she closed her eyes for a brief instant and shook her head. Sir, no, sir. My apologies. Fixing her cybernetic eyes on his heterochromatic ones, she continued, her voice low, measured, and practiced to show proper diligence and submission before her superior. It was my mistake. I saw an opportunity to press the attack against the enemy. I was wrong. No, you weren't wrong, Wyatt countered firmly, raising his right hand as he pressed a finger on her chest, right in the center of the 3 black stars that represented her house's heraldic shield. We had the advantage over them. You've always been aggressive, needlessly so in most cases. You put your life at risk, and for what? To get one more kill that you could have gotten all the same, had you waited a few more seconds and kept your distance? Removing his hand, he continued as he held her gaze. Did you feel invincible? That you could take 2 gunships down on your own? Raquel frowned slightly, biting the inner part of her cheek before replying. No, sir. I simply saw an opening to strike the enemy with— Is that so? Wyatt interjected. If you saw this opening, why didn't you tell me or someone else? Why did you go alone against enemies that outgunned you so overwhelmingly without access to your most powerful weapon? If it were not for the quick reactions of our squad mates, you would have died. Plain and simple. He glared at her, his eyes showing no sympathy. Is that what you want? To die a stupid death pursuing what? Glory for yourself in some vain attempt to show your skills? Raquel glared back, and her mouth moved before she could think things through clearly. It is easy for you to say, sir. You've been far more reckless, and you've claimed glory for your name. You've proved yourself and your worth. Her frown deepened as her fists began to tremble slightly. You can't understand the weight perched upon the shoulders of those wishing to be more than what they are. You're right, Wyatt admitted without shame or reservation, his nonchalant delivery smacking Raquel's senses again. I don't understand the hunger to be more than what I currently am, or the personal struggles and reasons you carry. Personally, I don't care either, he stated almost gently. I've never been an ambitious man. I believe I already made clear my opinion on glory hunting and gaining honor for myself, he said, spatting the words as if they burned his tongue. I've been reckless, yes, but putting the boarding of the gallant venture aside, every time I've done something that puts my life at risk, I did it because I had no other choice or as a consequence of my own idiocy. Not because I want glory, accolades, or some empty reward. His glare softened, but his voice remained firm and steady. I would never put my life on the line without a good reason, or if I had no other choice, Otillo. You? You put yourself at risk because you were greedy. Don't give me an empty excuse that you did it for something else other than that. And please don't turn yourself into a damn self-serving blue blood. Again, he raised his right arm, but this time he placed a hand on her shoulder as she stared at him, stunned. I know you want to prove yourself. That you want to show your skills, but don't seek an easy way to do it. An old man taught me that those who seek that easy path, impatient, glory-seeking, honor-blinded idiots, are the first to die. And if you die, what does that prove other than you were stupid? He smiled at her. Only risk your life if you have no other choice. Because if you're in that situation, then you don't have much else to lose as it is. Our victories, crowned by our return as we continue to breathe and live, have more value than personal achievements. Or at least that's what I believe in. Letting go of her, Raquel stared at him, unblinking, processing his words. That goes to you too, Noltar, Wyatt continued. The bronze-skinned woman took a tentative step forward, and reaching for the scythe-shaped carvings at the end of her neck guard, she called out to her squadron leader. Sir, Wyatt, what is to be my punishment? Am I to be replaced? Wyatt raised an eyebrow. Why should I deny the composters one of the best pilots available to us? Clop. Her Majesty would punish me greatly for breaking the elite fighter squadron fighting under her direct command. I'm not brave enough to gain her wrath. That being said, you'll be punished. For the remainder of this engagement, you will take on a supporting role in a regular Raptor, as your fighter is in no condition to enter combat again. Raquel stared into Wyatt's eyes for what felt like a short eternity, then saluted with a genuine smile. Understood, sir. It won't happen again. Wyatt nodded. See to it. If you do something like that again, I will find a replacement. I'd rather not, he said, returning her smile and the salute. He could feel many curious eyes staring at them, followed by soft murmurs when, just then, the rapid clanging of someone running caught their attention. The 5 pilots turned to the right in time to see a pair of Ikhanti bearing down on them. Or rather, one was upon them whilst the second was following close behind the first. Damage! Jincho, clad in a finer standard-issue set of combat armor, shouted as he came to a frantic halt next to Wyatt and Raquel. His obscured visor flickered, revealing his face as he turned an accusatory finger at the brown-haired woman. Featherbrain! Inept! Stupid! Butt-ass! Heavy damage! Can't fix in time for next combat. Careless. Valuable data will be lost. Missed! Eluded. And you, Wormbrain, he accused, turning to Wyatt. Me? What did I do? Wyatt asked, confused as the second Ikhanti, Feshik, he realized, limited herself to shaking her head disapprovingly. You are leader. Responsibility is yours. Wormbrain is infecting others with wormbrain disease. Maniacs, all of you. Not compliment this time. Lost so much data. Valuable, Jincho demanded, stomping his feet angrily. Prototype is prototype, no real fighter yet. But still beautiful. You ruin all. Not everything is lost, Jincho. We survived and 4 prototypes can still fight. Raquel's fighter was heavily damaged, but the data survived. Isn't that what matters? Wyatt protested, then blinked and turned to Raquel. It did survive, right? Yes, sir. It did. It is intact, Raquel replied slowly, her eyes set on the smaller alien. Jincho's stomping stopped and his arm fell to his side. Oh, data intact? Not lost? Good! Not butt-ass or wormbrain, he said, clapping his hands a few times. Happy you not die. Keep it that way. More data to gather. We'll make better. Now go away, he exclaimed as he walked past the duo, shooing them away with hurried hand gestures. Drink. Eat. Rest. Do whatever. I'll get prototypes ready for combat again. Railgun highest priority. Eager to review data. As she followed closely, Fashik gave Wyatt a quick, I'm so sorry look with all 3 pairs of eyes and an apologetic grimace on her face. For his part, Wyatt felt a chuckle rumbling in his chest, dismissing Fashik's apologetic look. He'd really taken a liking to Jincho, not just as the genius engineer and technician he was, but as a person and as a friend. Realization struck him hard, as it was the first time he'd truly considered the Ekhinda his friend, not just for convenience or as little more than an ally. He turned his gaze to his squad mates, Raquel first and then the others, and wondered if he'd come to see them in the same light. It was still frightening to accept others as his friends. They could die at any moment given their professions and positions. Raquel nearly did so not too long ago. More than anything, he didn't want to feel that pain again, that despair. That terrible agony he felt when he was but a child. Could I? Should I? He asked himself silently. Can I? He asked in a whisper unheard by others. Before he could ponder the subject further, he heard Clara's voice in his mind. Wyatt, come to the war room immediately. It was all she said. It was all he needed to get moving. Wyatt entered the war room and was greeted by his 2 friends, who were staring at the holographic tactical map at the center of the large table. The door closed behind him as he joined them, idly sitting next to the red-armored woman. No words of greeting were exchanged, preferring to settle for quick glances and polite head nods. The pilot looked closer at the tactical map. Eyes narrowing, it took him a passing moment to understand what he was seeing. It was a representation of the pirates' fleet steadily closing the distance with the Keistan reinforcements. The latter were divided into 2 roughly identical groups, while the pirates had further divided themselves into 5 smaller formations, approaching from several attack vectors. The scout ships were maintaining distance, likely firing probing attacks without committing to a full engagement. They're going to enter battle soon, he said, stating the obvious yet feeling the need to do so. That's Raven Tomb? He asked, pointing at the smallest group with the largest signature of all. That fatherless creature is a devious one, Cynthia said, glaring at the map. One far more dangerous than any of us gave him credit for, Clara added in agreement. If Yasid Keistan has any measure of sense or a capable XO, she'll avoid the clear trap set before them, she frowned deeply. Or perhaps that's the true trap. To avoid confronting him directly as the rest of his forces whittle the Keistan fleet down ship by ship? Wyatt stared at the map, but he was just as lost as Clara in that regard. What was the real trap? Something they were already seeing in plain sight, a hidden ploy, or something else entirely. He didn't know which possibility was worse. Yet he was certain that a man like Raventomb would never consider being fair in anything. And if the level of organization he faced from his forces when he wasn't in direct command of them was any indication of the threat he posed, the more dire the situation for the Keistans became. What does Commander Redford have to say? He asked, heart beating hard in his chest. That the faster we take him down, the better, Cynthia replied, turning to face Wyatt. If even he, the Vorpal strike, is rattled by Raventomb's machinations and reach, then no other outcome is preferable. He must die this day, she said firmly and resolutely. Our ground forces have been deployed at the expense of leaving us with no capabilities to launch boarding actions unless it is to perform a decisive strike with Cynthia leading the spear tip, Clara summarized. We'll strike from the darkness. Our actions have been successful thus far. Raventomb is momentarily blinded to the fate of his sieging fleet. Or if he knows, his movements do not indicate that he is aware. She let out a tired sigh. Irritation flashed in her purple eyes as she turned her gaze to her heterochromatic-eyed friend, offering a somewhat distant smile. I feel dirty thinking this, Wyatt, but I can't help but see parallels, shall we say, between you and Raventomb, she proclaimed calmly and coldly, not with the intention to hurt or judge. It was the jaded detachment of a clinical, pragmatic observation. You lack the fiery ambition to hold power, an attribute that is prevalent in Esket's actions and goals in the short time I've known that misbegotten scoundrel. But you share an unpredictability that shakes me to my core. Truly, I cannot read what his next actions will be with any significant degree of certainty. Wyatt frowned. We're nothing alike. He's a pirate, a criminal without any sense of loyalty to anything but his own sick, twisted needs. I'm not. I agree with my Princess Wyatt, Cynthia joined in, her tone serious and direct. From everything we know of the vermin, he's unpredictable in his actions. He hides his true intentions until they are ready to spring forth. He strikes with the certainty of achieving victory, no matter the cost. Wyatt stared at his blue-haired friend as she paused for a moment, her blue eyes showcasing a level of understanding and almost wary kindness that he'd seen only twice. Understanding dawned on him, and he, too, could see the parallels Clara was talking about. In another life, under other circumstances, would I have become just like him? Another Raventomb? A threat to the Principality, my home? He asked himself, his eyes turning to the display, not really seeing the fleet movements. He only saw the danger, the devastation, and the countless lives lost. It sickened him enough to make his stomach churn with disgust. His eyes found Clara's piercing and hard. What must I do? We know what he's after, but little else. We are all in agreement that he must not be allowed to achieve victory, the blonde princess revealed. Redford claims that overwhelming firepower may not be enough to stop him. We must match his trickery and unpredictable nature with our own. His goal is known, his larger plans easily read but difficult to counter. It is in his direct command that we face an unknown. Wyatt, I ask you to place yourself in Raventomb's position so we may glimpse, even if just barely, what he will do so we can end his miserable existence once and for all. Wyatt replied without hesitation or doubt in his voice. I can only promise to do my best. But tell me, Clara, what is he after in Rankov? What is his true objective? He asked, and the princess answered. A cold chill ran down his spine at the revelation. The conclusion was easy to reach. Victory had to be theirs, for the safety of the Principality and its citizens. As Clara finished her revelation, the three of them received a direct priority message from Redford. No words were needed as they all turned to the screen as it came to life, displaying none other than the infamous pirate lord himself, Esket Raventomb Adante. Wyatt observed the lowlife attentively, noticing the gray hair partially obscured by a black hood. The man was ancient, and for a moment he saw Mr. Warlow's face over Raventomb's. His face was a collection of wrinkles, several tattoos and scars, both deep and faint, marking his experience and long life in his olive-colored flesh. But where Mr. Warlow was old and withered by time, Esket was anything but. He stood tall, easily over 2 meters, firm, strong, powerful, and full of authority gained through brutality. His right eye was missing, replaced by a cybernetic patch and a purple, faintly glowing lens. His left eye was brown, organic, and showed the sort of experience and confidence that came from having won countless battles. That eye was cold as the void, lacking all empathy, a testament to boundless bloodshed, treason, cruelty, and so much worse as it stared with an almost mocking indifference. He was standing, wearing an impressive set of gray armor marred with countless symbols that Wyatt didn't know what they meant, other than a show of power and status in their twisted society. Then, he noticed, the armor had to be especially designed, as the chest plate resembled the scales of a creature called Dragon. His pauldrons were a matching set, running alongside the outer lines of his arms until they reached his hands, which ended in plain-looking gauntlets. His stomach lacked armor, but the body glove covering it gave no indication that it was just for show. His legs were heavily armored from his knees and below, but his thighs were as exposed as his stomach, with only a belt of sorts strapped to his waist. What he could only guess to be a powerful handgun rested on his right hip as a hand rested on it almost lazily. Behind him, a cape could barely be perceived, the source of the hood resting on his head. Finally, several small decorative additions adorned his armor. Nothing too ornate, but just enough to catch the eye of anyone looking at him. Wyatt's glare intensified as the pirate lord offered a toothy grin before performing an exaggerated bow that made his cape flutter about, revealing a feather-like pattern on it. "My, what an honor it is to have a spawn of the bear come to confront me," the man began, his voice strong, confident, and deeply baritone. "I must admit I'm surprised that one of you damn blue-blooded fools stopped counting your piles of treasures and credit accounts to come all the way here. Did dancing in your golden halls get a bit too boring?" He laughed deeply as he began to pace around the room he was in. It was dark, lit only by a light above him, giving him a more imposing, mysterious, and sinister appearance. "Yet," he said, his laughter stopping abruptly as his expression turned serious, almost hurt and disappointed as he revealed his neck and a great scar crossing it from side to side. "I find myself wounded that your prodigal rust sniffer, that unshackled animal you call Andrew Unyielding Caiston, has not come himself to settle our little score. Oh well, he'll die another day, at the time of my choosing." "Pfft, unyielding," he said, making finger quotes and in a squeaky nasal voice. "What does he know about being unyielding? I ask you, slaves to the raven and its puppets, what do nobles know about being unyielding? About hardship? About true struggle, hunger, want, and need? To know that what you want is forever kept away from you? The only thing they know how to do is to sit their fat, stinking asses on some couch worth more than what you'll earn in 10 years and do nothing but smell their own farts and call them the most aromatic perfumes around," he continued, pacing, his gaze unrelenting. "What do they know about your pain? They shackle you from birth to obey their crumbling system, imposed by some uppity son of a bitch thousands of years ago. They put themselves above you and shit down on your open mouths, demanding that you praise and give thanks for that oh-so-rich meal they deigned themselves to give you all. You slaves, or do you prefer if I call you commoners? It doesn't matter. You're their slaves, happily dancing to their stupid songs, while they take everything from you just to play their little games of power, prestige, honor, and glory." He barked a laugh. "Honor and glory," Eskett repeated. What a stupid joke. What frivolous delusion. They shout their glories gained by spilling your blood, by sacrificing your lives as nothing more than commodities. Useless, expendable things that belong to them, not to you. What is that if not a true slave? He stopped pacing, stretching his left arm and opening his palm in a friendly gesture. "I tell you all, slaves to the raven, servants of the bear, blinded free men and women living under the gentle tyranny of the asters, that there is a better way. Join me. Raise your weapons against your so-called noble superiors, those who have done nothing for you. I've come not as an invader, but as a liberator of those valiant enough to seize the chance to earn true freedom and taste it for the first time. I'm not a pirate, I'm not a slaver, I'm not a petty conqueror, and I'm most certainly not a fucking blue blood." Taking hold of his cape, he spread it wide. "I'm Eskett Raventomb Adante. I was a slave to the raven just like you until I grabbed my destiny with my own hands. Now I am the tombstone of the raven and its lapdogs. I am Raventomb. Join me and you will be truly free." The transmission ended, showcasing the shattered skull of a raven as the boot of a simple miner stepped on it. "Wyatt!" Cynthia hissed the name in barely contained rage, but not directed at the equally fuming man. The princess's hand reached out to her. "You have 2 hours until we reach the fleet. By that time, the battle will be underway." Wyatt nodded, and his attention turned to the holographic display. Crossing his arms, he began to think, now further motivated by pure killing intent. In the void, the Nornavio left Rankov and the Reaper's Eye behind. The Reaper's blade went on ahead while a near-full fighter wing formed a bubble around the assault destroyer, acting as its escorts. They flew past debris fields formed by destroyed pirate ships. The Wolfhound yearned to be unleashed.